Joining us today is someone who, without question, fully embodies the term multi-hyphenated. She's an actress, former show host, and internet personality whose work spans across television, film, and the entire world of geek culture. You've seen her on shows like Supernatural and Jane the Virgin, heard her voice as Hawkgirl in the video game Lego DC Supervillains, and watched her bring Meghan Markle to life in Lifetime's Harry and Meghan Becoming Royal. She's also been a familiar face in the nerd space, hosting DC Daily on DC Universe. She was a field correspondent on AMC's Geeking Out alongside Kevin Smith and Greg Grunberg, and she has appeared on countless other fan-favorite programs across IGN, Collider, and the CW. Today, she's here to talk to us about her latest project as the writer behind Masters of the Universe, Andra, a brand new one-shot from Dark Horse Comics coming out on October 1st that puts a spotlight on one of Eternia's most compelling heroes. It is our absolute pleasure to welcome Tiffany Smith onto the Oblivion Bar Podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. I got a little tired just listening to all that stuff.
You've got an extensive resume.
Yeah.
I'm glad I gave myself
Aaron,
time to breathe because, geez.
Yeah, Aaron, we were talking a little bit before the recording, and we've come to the conclusion, and just so everyone at home is, everyone listening at home, this is the pronunciation that we decided on, Andra, right? Like that's what we decided, as we decided, Tiffany?
Yeah.
Yeah. I do the whole thing
I say
over
Andra.
again, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. You're fine. Everyone, it's funny because I think it's like when people say Han or Han.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't bother me. I'm like, I will always say Andra, and if people say Andra, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Is it GIF or GIF for you?
Oh gosh.
I always say GIF. I know it's GIF, but I say GIF. It's a G.
Yeah, I think it's a GIF as well. Like I've always just said GIF, and I know again it's one of those accepting things. You just know that you're wrong, but it's okay. Yeah. Well, Tiffany, as we sort of mentioned there in the intro, you've worn a ton of hats and found success pretty much at every single one of those ventures. And I've heard you say in a recent interview with Collider back at San Diego Comic-Con a few months back that you really wanted to transition this focus of yours in your career to basically just acting and writing. So before we get into this Andra one shot, I need you to take us back to this moment that you got the call from Dark Horse. Actually, I'm going to go back even further than that. Before the Dark Horse, I actually want to get your recollection on sort of the call you got for the show when you eventually found out that you were going to be voicing Andra on the Netflix show.
Yeah. So what's so crazy is I think that, working in the entertainment industry, there's no clear path. There's no, you do this job, then you do this job, then you do this job, and then you're going to book this thing. Mm-hmm. It's not like any other industry where you are an assistant and then you do this thing and then you're going to get this thing. So yeah, I hosted for a really long time and I still host and I absolutely love it. But there came a point where I was like, I really want to start doing more acting, more voice acting. And so I started kind of taking classes on the side, and I didn't really tell people because I was like, I'm very much that person that's like, until I feel like I'm really good at it, I didn't want to start putting myself out there, especially because, I mean, you guys know this, but you get to meet so many people as hosts and, you get to work in this space where it was like, I didn't want to start telling the people that I got to interview that I was like, hey, I'm auditioning for projects that you might be a part of, until I felt really confident in what I was going to be able to do in the room. Mm-hmm. And so when voiceover stuff started happening and I started auditioning for that, I was really lucky because, I got to be on DC All Access and I got to talk with such incredible voice actors and such incredible voice directors, and get their input on, putting together great DC animated movies and how voice actors do what they do in the booth. And so I remember when the Masters of the Universe one came up, they were doing two shows at the same time. The Masters of the Universe, the one that was more aimed at a younger audience, and then our show. Mm-hmm. And so I auditioned for both of them at the same time, and I didn't know who I was auditioning for. I actually think it was just sides that were for Tila for both shows. And I remember I was just so, I just took such a long time doing the audition because I was like, I want it to be as good as it possibly can be. And I had gotten to host stuff with Kevin Smith before. So I was like, man, I want him to hear these and be like, dang, Tiffany did a great job.
Yeah.
And so I remember just re-listening to it and then sending it off and being like, okay, I did the best that I can do. I just have to let it go now. And I forgot about it because that's kind of what you do as an actor. You can't you can't stay too focused on them. It's always in the back of your mind when it's ones that you really want. But I had to kind of let it go. And then I remember getting the call that was like, you got it. And I was like, what? And I think one of the things that still sticks in my mind that I'm so thankful for is I had a conversation with Kevin at one point where he was like, I just wanted to let you know that like Mattel listened to the tapes and they picked you. And then they were like, what about Tiffany for this? And he was like, yes, which that just made me so much more confident, because it was one of those things where I was like, it's amazing when you're getting to work with your friends. But I think when you're a creative, it's so like, you hear that thing of like, it's about who you know. And that's so wonderful and so helpful. And yes, you do want to work with your friends, but it's a whole other level of confidence building when it's someone that you don't know that chooses you for the character because your voice is right. And then when your friends can be like, yes, her. So that felt amazing. It was really, really awesome. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. Like a lot of opportunities come, it's like luck plus talent, right? Like it's a lot of that, I think. And not only just in showbiz, but I think in a lot of industries. But it seems like, and you could tell me that you'd be the better person to ask here, but I think in my own dumb brain, I see someone who could be like an internet personality, and maybe that transition to voice acting would maybe be a little easier. Not totally easy, of course. That is a totally separate talent that you have to have. But I think like being an already successful, great internet personality like you were, hosting, again, DC Daily and stuff over AMC, that move over to voice acting, did it feel seamless at all, or was it a whole other talent?
I feel like every single one of them is a new, you can take some pieces from it, but it's still a new skill.
Sure.
Because, I mean, podcasting and hosting there is a comfort because you're in front of a camera and, you know, you're chatting. But the other side of it is, you know, there's stuff where it was like, I remember being in the booth for one of the scenes, and it was like, okay, so you're falling off of a ship and then you're rolling on the ground and then you're picking up your gun and firing. And I'm like,
let me just play that in my head really quick.
Yeah. And so it was like, Colette Bennett Sunderman is our voice director for Master of the Universe, and she's amazing. And she was just like, literally, she was just like, and I was like, okay. So I realized that like I'm a good mimic. Like when people when they do that stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's what that sounds like. And when you hear other actors do it, you're like, oh, okay. And so that's one of the things that I think, I joke about this, but it's so true for me. Anytime I work with anybody, I'm like, whether they want to be a mentor to me or not, they're going to be, and I'm going to learn something from them. And so I feel very lucky that I've gotten to be around such incredible talent and watch them, that I will soak up everything that I possibly can along the way. And that's one of the things where it's like, I think as a host, and, you know, there's certain things, like I said, I think that you take along with you, but there's so much stuff where it's like, you know, just being able to know what it sounds like to take a punch versus giving a punch. That's not stuff that you do in your regular life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you pick that stuff up along the way. And, you know, I think one of the biggest things that I also do is I feel really confident in asking questions and being curious. Like if I don't know something, I will ask someone, because there's so much stuff that you don't know until you've done it. Mm-hmm. And even on Masters of the Universe, you know, I had such amazing talent around me, where Susan Eisenberg, I will always be so thankful to her, because I remember we did our first session, and for us, we started recording right before the pandemic. And so I only had one session with other actors, and the rest of it was just in the booth by herself. But I had a session and Susan Eisenberg was there. And afterwards I was like, can I grab lunch with you? I mean, she's an incredibly prolific voice actress. She's done Wonder Woman. She was our sorceress. Like, she was just incredible. And so I grabbed lunch with her, and I just literally asked her 100 bajillion questions. And she was so kind and wonderful and so helpful and just so available to me, and really encouraged me, and was like, because I said to her, I was like, I've never taken a character from the beginning of a show through a whole season. And she was like, I never would have guessed that from that one session. She's like, you got
awesome.
This. So yeah, so that was a little bit of the, I don't know. Did I answer your question? I kind of just rambled on.
Absolutely. No, you totally did. You totally did. You know, the inquisitive part of it is so important, right? I think that's I think one of the most valuable, and actually that's a trait that I always find really impressive with anyone, like especially with like other friends and folks in our, I guess, peers, like podcasting friends and such, people that have that inquisitiveness about them. And I totally agree with you. You can sort of just like, I have this thing where I like being the dumbest person in any room that I'm in. I want to just soak up all of the talent and knowledge from the other awesome people around me. So I totally get that impulse. And, you know, I want to, in terms of like, again, segregating talents over here, scripting comics is its own very specific talent. And I want to sort of noodle on this idea and it being this, you know, very specific thing that you possibly had to learn. So could you take us back to the opportunity you first, excuse me, let me try that again. Can you take us back to when that opportunity presented itself? And did your preparation look, gosh, sorry, I messed up over here on my side here. What did your preparation look like when you were given the green light over at Dark Horse for this Andra series?
So the comic book was interesting because I've always had it on my list that at some point I wanted to write a comic. I grew up reading comics, and so getting to host a show for DC Comics and getting to be surrounded by some incredibly talented writers and artists, I think it got a little intimidating to me because I've gotten to be around such high-level creatives in that space. And so I remember I was on a Zoom with one of the executives from Mattel, and we were talking about Motu and, you know, how the show was going. And he was just kind of like, what have you been up to? Like, what are some of the other things that you want to do? And I was like, well, I would love to do more voiceover. And I was like, at some point I would love to write a comic. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. He's like, have you thought about writing one with Andra? And I was like, I mean, I would love to write an Andra comic. And he's like, okay, well, can you send us some one-page ideas? And I was like, uh-huh. And then, of course, I get off the phone and I'm like, oh, my God, what ideas do I have? Let's go. So I think it was something that like I've always tried to focus on, too, is that, you know, you can be really lucky to be surrounded by great people, but you also have to sometimes be brave and willing to say what you actually want to do, because half the time they don't know what you want to do until you say it.
Right.
And so the fact that like I even said and mentioned, like he had no idea that I wanted to write comics. And so when I brought that up, he was like, how can we make this happen? And so I sent over ideas to them, and Dark Horse and Mattel signed off on an idea that I had. And from there, it was kind of just, you know, again, reached out to some very good comic book writer friends that I knew and was like, what am I doing? Because it was, you know, it was one of those things where I was like, I know how to read a comic. I've read a ton of comics in my life. But I hadn't really, you know, I even co-hosted a show that was like how to write comics. I've read books about writing comics, but I'd never actually sat down and had the like blank page in front of me. And so it was honestly a really intimidating, scary feeling at the very beginning and at a couple times throughout the process. But like I said, I'm very lucky to have people around me who are incredibly supportive. And I think that, you know, it's one of those things that you just do it. And as you go along, like now I look back and I'm like, sometimes you write things, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but where you write something and then you look back at it and you're like, did I write that? Like, even in journals where you look back at something and you're like, what? Who was that person? Like, so writing the comic was incredible and such an adventure. And it's funny because I'll talk to TV film writer friends who've also written comics. And they didn't say this to me when I started writing it, but they're like, now after it's done, they're like, we didn't want to tell you this, but you kind of picked the hardest medium to start in, writing by yourself. And I was like, great, thanks, guys. Because they're like, you're not only writing the script, you're writing dialogue, you're storyboarding, you know, and on top of that, you can't write as much as you want. You know, you have to also pare it down. You have to make it limited. You're also figuring out like puzzle pieces with splash pages and the numbering and all of that stuff. So I think it's one of those things where when we read comics, I think it happens in film and television too, where it's like when it doesn't work, you notice, but when it does work, that's when you know it's actually like a decent writer. So I'm hopeful that the comic works.
It does. For everyone at home, you know, Aaron and I have had a chance to read this comic early. It comes out on October 1st. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. But like reading it, yes, it absolutely works. And honestly, and I hope this isn't like a backwards compliment, but I could never tell that this was like your first venture in comics, truthfully. So very, very great job on that one. So
thank you.
And Chris would know because he has experience in writing comic. Well, in attempting, in practicing, right, Chris?
Yeah. See, Tiffany, there's the main difference between you and I is that one of us has attempted and one of us has done it. So
succeeded. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I succeeded and actually got it out.
Listen, it's barely any different, honestly.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I apologize I had to drop off there for a second. So, but I have a follow-up question that I hope that you may or may not have, covered. But, one thing, I was reading an article that you had an interview that you had participated in recently, and you were talking about how with your experience, doing the voice acting for Andra, it kind of gave you this very unique perspective. You feel like, you're kindred spirits, her so well. Mm-hmm. How was it easier than anticipated to write that? But then also, did that create any obstacles to writing the other characters, or did you feel that same kind of familiarity since you had been on the show for so long?
I think that there definitely was an ease in writing Andra's voice. I remember the first session that I went into, because sometimes you'll submit stuff for voiceover and you put on a different voice, or you'll amplify it or do different things when you're submitting an audition because you just aren't sure what they're actually going to want you to do when you're recording. Or you'll submit something and you come in and they're like, we actually want you to do this, this, and this. But when I came in to record, Kevin said to me, he was like, Andra is you, but amplified. Yeah. She is the fangirl who's excited, who loves this universe. And there's a 3rd grade photo of me with an action figure from She-Ra. I grew up loving this stuff, and I'm still that girl, who loves all of this stuff and gets so excited. So he's like, that's you. Andra is you. And she's so excited and effervescent, and just that's what we want for this character. She's the audience's entry into this world. So I think that made it a lot easier for me to write this character, because there were certain moments and certain things that she sees where it's I knew I could just be excited about it and just amp it up a bit more. So that part of it came fairly easy to me. And so I think when I started coming up with an idea for where I wanted to take Andra's story, it was one of those things where, you always hear write what you know kind of thing, where it's what's something that I would want to talk about and really focus on. And I think also kind of dealing with being, a woman in this space and loving this genre for my whole life, and kind of feeling like a fish out of water, or that imposter syndrome where you're not necessarily sure that you can take on the role that other people see for you. And that was where we've talked about this, so it's not any surprise, but the comic book takes place between season 1 and season 2 of the show. And so it's, we see her become Man-at-Arms. And so it's how does she take that on? How does she really embrace that? And I think sometimes when you get a mantle put on you, it's an interesting dynamic of how do you embrace this? And how do you actually step into that new role? So I think that was where I could really put on put myself into that. Cause I think there's a lot of times where opportunities and things come up where you're I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know how to do this, and I don't know if this is really me, or someone else is going to help me do this. Someone else can take this on. So that part came easily. And then I think what helped too is because I got to watch the show and I grew up watching it, that I knew all those other characters' voices in my head. And I think I was talking to one of my writer friends, and she was laughing because I said, I talk out loud. So I write a lot of my scripts. I voice note them to myself. And she was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yeah." I literally will be like, and then Andra was like, "Da da da da," and then Orca showed up and he was like, "Da da da," and then I take that and I'll rework it into the script. And I realized that I think that that's because I'm an actor, and so I'm used to doing scripting that way. And so it's a lot easier for me sometimes to talk things out versus sitting in front of the computer and just typing. Because every time I tried to do that with a blank page, I was like, oh, this is what writer's block feels like.
Sure.
So I think there were certain jokes and things that just popped up that I was like, oh, that's Orko. Or when I was writing Marzo, where it was just, we all have, I think if you grow up watching these kind of cartoons, or you have comic books in your head, what this kind of a villain's supposed to sound like. And, there's a couple of Lord of the Rings-ish references in there, because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan.
I've heard you say this. I've heard you say you're a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was really fun. And it's fun to get to dip into different characters. That's why I think, most writers, I'm like, they know what it is to be an actor, whether they want to be actors or not, because that's what an actor has to do, is put on these different characters and become them. And so I think that helped me be able to write these different characters too.
Well, you definitely nailed it, because the feeling of this while reading it is very Saturday morning, very old school He-Man, because I grew up on it. I was the same way. I was the same kid, taking my Ninja Turtles and my He-Man characters to school and then hiding in my backpack, so when my dad picked me up, he didn't see that I brought them. So I was the same kid. And it's funny that you actually talk about some of these inner conflicts that Andra was facing, because you said that Andra has questioned what it means to be a hero, and often to walk the line between being a soldier and the morality of the choices that go along with being a soldier. And so what other inner conflicts do you think, or what other inner conflicts did you really want her to face in this story, besides, we see the question of the mantle of leadership. We see, and I think, and I say that I relate to this, and Chris can understand, because being in the military, we both came from the military. Being thrust into a leadership position is just as scary as being put on, in very stressful situations, because you don't know necessarily what to do to be right all the time. So what other inner conflicts did you want her to face?
I mean, the leadership role for sure. I think that was a big one. The other one I think that hopefully comes through is the independence. I think that on the show, we got to see Andra. She was a scavenger. Her and Tila went around together and she did her own thing. And then now, she was looking for family, and then she finds family, and it's like, what does that actually look like? Because when you are someone who does things on your own for a really long time, how do you then kind of fit yourself in and actually accept help and accept others around you being able to support you when you need it, and asking for help and allowing them to help you, and not just feeling like you have to do everything on your own? Because I think that for me was one of the big storylines in this. And just being able to accept that help from family, chosen or otherwise, because I think that was a big piece in the show. And I think it's still a really big piece for Andra to learn along the way. Choosing those friendships and things. And then I think the imposter syndrome, where, I think we all experience that in so many ways in our lives, where it's just choosing the thing that you want to do and having those moments where you do feel like a badass, and then having another moment where you're like, what am I doing? How did I end up here? How am I the person that's supposed to make this decision or fix this thing? Or feeling like you're thrust into a position and then you fail. And then how do you pick yourself up after that? And was it really a failure, or how do you learn from that thing? Because I think that, I think something I constantly try to do for myself is, if things don't necessarily go the way that I thought they were supposed to, what is the universe or whatever trying to teach me? What is the lesson that I can take from this? Because I have to believe, and this is for me, I believe, I'm like, everything is always working out for my best interest. So what is the thing that I'm taking away from this moment? Even if in this moment I feel like it's a failure, this is something that's going to be better for me in the long run. And maybe I can't see it right now, but like, what can I take away from this? So I think that that's something where there are certain moments in there where I hope that, people can see it may seem like a failure, or it may seem like a disaster in that moment, but in the long run, it teaches her something that she needed to learn that makes her better at what she's doing along the way.
100%. I think one thing that you've very much accomplished with this one shot is you've made her a little bit more approachable and relatable as a character. And I can, like, just reading through it, I'm going to read it again because I enjoyed it so much, but there's just these relatable moments, whether you're in a leadership role, whether you're a teacher, whether you're somebody who might have to teach something in the future. Like, there are these moments in this where you've written her so well. So thank you for that.
Tiffany, if I can
I feel like it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't want to spoil a thing at the end, but there's a splash page at the end that, like, I mentioned this in another chat, but someone asked me what was my favorite page. And I was like, there was a page that came up for me at the very beginning before I even had the idea of the book that is something else happening in the background for her.
Oh, yeah. That was a killer scene. Killer.
But I was like, I hope that it's so, like, it's on one level, it's a little cheesy, but also, like, I want everyone to feel how special everyone is, even if they maybe don't have quote unquote magic.
Yeah. No, perfect. Well done on that one.
Yeah. I think if we continue on with Andra in this one shot, which again comes out on October 1st, I've said it twice now, we'll say it at least one more time during this conversation, but we will start to mine you for some spoilers. So let's just, before we get you out of here, I want to just I have a sort of a broad question for you here. And it's just, again, Aaron mentioned at the top, so many hats. You've done so many things. I know I mentioned it earlier too as well, but like, and I'm just going to list off a couple of things just so that people can really fully realize what's going on here. Again, we said it already, but DC Daily, AMC's Geeking Out. You've had roles in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Supernatural. You've been a producer for TV and for podcasting even. Of course, your voice acting roles we've talked about both on Master Universe and, of course, Hawkgirl over with the Lego DC Supervillains. And now add comic writer to this resume. So I guess my long-winded way of asking this question, Tiffany, is basically, how do you stay creatively energized through all these ventures?
I think, I love all of it. Like, I love being creative. It's something that's just in my blood. And if I'm not creating something, I feel stagnant and bored. I think that, the last couple of years have been an interesting time in the industry. And going back to the thing of, like, it may not look the way I wanted it to look, but looking at it back and saying, like, what is the, like, silver lining in this? If we hadn't had the last couple of years that we've had in this industry, I don't know that I would have pushed myself in all of these different creative ways that I have. If we'd had normal pilot seasons where I'd been auditioning the way that I had been in the past, I don't know that I would have had the time to be able to produce and voice direct on an audio drama in the way that I've been able to do, or had the time to sit and write a comic book by myself. Like, it did take a lot of time. Like, it was not something that I just sat down and was like, oh, I'm just going to write. Like, it's not it's not an easy, at least for me, it was not an easy task. So, and I think anything that you're doing for the first time, if you care about it, it takes some effort. So I'm thankful because I think having more time and having to take a little step away from all the auditions just because the industry had taken a hit in the way that it has, it opened me up to be able to push forward in different spaces in the industry where it's like, okay, I can start doing more theater, which I'm in love with. I got to go to London and do a play a couple months ago. And I'm working and doing more stuff in the theater space here in LA. And, I think it's one of those things that I think when you are creative, you'll find whatever space you can to creatively fulfill yourself. And that's something for me where it's like, of course, obviously I want to make money doing what I'm doing because I want to make a living doing it. But at the same time, it's like, I don't think I've ever been as creatively fulfilled as I am right now. Getting to do all the things that I'm getting to do and getting to create stuff with the people that I'm getting to create stuff with. Cause and then when you're doing that, I think it's infectious, where I got to do a Kickstarter where like a couple months ago, I got to, we did the Kickstarter and so many people showed up for Deepest Darkest, a film that I'm producing with Mark Bernardin, and we co-created the idea together. But that put me in a space where I got to film and act with Rosario Dawson and Ernie Hudson. And, wow. Rosario is someone that I've looked up to and respected as an actress for so long, where it's like doing the thing that you love and being creatively passionate about the things that you enjoy, I think really does open the door for other things where it's like, you never know what's going to open the next door, where it's like, it sounds so cheesy, but I love playing Magic the Gathering and I play a lot and I've posted about it on social media. And now I'm going to Atlanta to moderate a panel for them. And I did it in San Diego Comic-Con, where it's like, you just never know how things will work out. And what doors will open or how they'll open.
Mm-hmm.
It's also wild how much you do look like.
No, you did. That's perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
It's also wild how much you do look like Meghan Markle, by the way. It is. My wife watches her show right now, and I'm just like, man, this is uncanny.
Yeah. Before we get to our last question, I have one sort of, I guess, comic specific question for you here.
Yeah.
You don't spend a ton of time on it, but Aaron and I, we're filthy name droppers. Okay. We love it. We love talking to comic creators here on the podcast. You said you have some friends in the comic world. Would you mind just sort of letting us in on some of the folks that you are not only your friends with, but maybe folks who have helped you along the way with Andra and so on?
I mean, Tim Sheridan I have to give Tim a huge shout out, and his Green Lantern run that he did recently is so wonderful. If you've not read it, definitely check it out. But Tim was one of the people that I called a lot along the way. And I remember when I first started writing, when I was like, I'm going to write this book, I was like, I asked him to write it with me. And he said, no. He was like, you can do this. And I was like, oh. Are you sure? So he is not only an incredible writer, but also a wonderful, supportive, awesome friend. So definitely Tim Sheridan. I feel very lucky. Like I've gotten to be around Jeff Johns and Jim Lee and Sterling Gates and so many incredible Pornsack, who's doing his own thing, and Jay Holtham, and just so many great writers. But right now, like Becky Cloonan is one of my favorites. I love
Becky's great.
The kind of gothic romance, dark stuff that she does. Somna was so amazing. I just finished reading the Zatanna, the Black Label comic book run that I really, really, really enjoyed that.
Was that the Bringing Down the House?
Bringing Down the House, I think.
Yeah. Yep. And then I was also just reading the Jamal Campbell Zatanna run that I really, I'm a huge Zatanna fan. So that's one of my dream role to play. But I'm enjoying that. So yeah, I've like, there's so many comic creators that I'm like, and this person, because I feel very lucky that I've gotten to interview and talk to so many of them throughout DC All Access days and even Marvel days when I was doing stuff over there. And it's fun to then get to see all these people who then are now doing stuff within like the TV film space too, where it's like, I just reread Criminal the other day and they're doing a TV series of that. And I'm like, that, I think another edition of that, not Criminal, but like a second series. Yeah, sequel just came out. I was like, why can't I think of the word? Yeah.
Something Knives, yeah.
Yeah, just came out. So I'm super excited to check that out. Yeah. Yep. So that's some of my comic stuff.
Yeah. Well,
right now.
Generally, before we end the show or end the interview, so to speak, we like to ask our guests what they've been kind of enjoying recently. I feel like you kind of already answered that, but we're still going to ask it. Yeah. But this is your chance to highlight a comic, a movie, TV series, podcast. I mean, anything really, like album. What have you been listening to? What have you been checking out? What are you like loving right now?
Yeah. So I am in deep vampire mode right now. I recently watched Nosferatu and Bram Stoker's Dracula. The new Nosferatu. I'm about to rewatch the older one because
the down bad one.
I was younger, what?
The down bad one.
Yeah. I when I was younger, my parents wouldn't let me watch Dark Shadows, the one that came out in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
They said it was too dark and scary and like romantic-y for me when I was little. So I would sneak downstairs and like pretend I was asleep under the coffee table to watch. And so I saw that it was on Amazon the other day and I was like, oh my God, I need to watch this. And that just like put me in a rabbit hole of like all vampire stuff. So yeah, Nosferatu, Bram Stoker's Dracula, which like, I mean,
it's perfect.
Gary.
Yeah.
He's just so good. Yeah. He's so good.
Yep.
And then one of my favorite shows on television, which I just say this all the time, is Interview with the Vampire. If people are not watching that show, the acting on it, the storytelling, and I hadn't read the original book, so I just finished reading Interview with the Vampire, and now I'm reading The Vampire Lestat now. But yeah, I'm in deep on the vampire mode. And I think part of what I love about so much of these shows right now, and Foundation is also another show that I'm obsessed with. But a lot of them are shows that the showrunners and the actors are theater people, which I'm starting to realize that, I think I gravitate towards a lot of television that is a lot of theater peeps that are involved on the shows. I don't know why. I don't know if like I can sense it or what, but yeah. Those are some of the things. And then the new Sabrina Carpenter album came out, and I'm really obsessed with that. So it's like totally. You said album, so I'm telling you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, nailed it.
I've heard it's good. I know it's from what I understand, it's got a lot of disco vibe to it.
It does. It really does. Yeah. And one of my friends, literally like a week ago, had just had a 50th birthday party that was all disco themed, and then the album came out, and I was like, this could not have been better timed.
There you go. Love it.
Yeah.
Once we wrap this up, I'm going to go finish up the last episode of Wednesday. So, speaking of like
I have the new ones just came out. The new like second half.
Yep.
Get on it. It's good. It's good.
Tiffany, once again, thank you so much for being here. This is awesome. We don't want to take up too much of your time today, but we just want to make sure that, our listeners and fans of yours get to hear you talk a little bit about Master Universe Andra. Again, hit shelves on October 1st, so make sure you go to a local comic shop, put that on your pull list. And Tiffany, of course, anytime that you want to come back on the show, say you have another, I have no doubt that you're going to continue on with comics. Absolutely. And you're going to make something else. And I promise you the next time you come on, there's not going to be so many technical issues and we're not going to be late and all these other things that went wrong today. I wasn't going to expose us, but I did. So here we are.
Spill the tea, great. Chris. Yeah. Spill the tea.
But, again, thank you so much. And before we let you go, how can folks follow your career? Is there anything that you want to sort of tease or, tee up for whatever you're working on next?
Yeah. Anybody who wants to see everything that's going on, just follow me on social media. I'm mostly on Instagram. It's just Tiffany_Smith. The next thing that I have coming up actually is we are getting ready to launch the next season of our audio drama for Curious Matter. And this season we're going straight horror. It's called Karnaki, Blood and Ether, and it launches on September 23rd. So if you go over there, I'll have all the info on there. But yeah, that's where everything's going on. And I'll have updates on Deepest Darkest, on the movie that we're producing and stuff, and all the Magic the Gathering fun stuff on the Spider-Man deck. All that good stuff will be on there. And obviously Andra coming out October 1st.
That's right.
We're gonna have a signing that's coming up, so I'll have info about in-person signings for the comic as well.
You'll be at New York, correct?
I don't know yet.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
I think she's messing with us. She's going to be there.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm really hoping.
Well, we hope to see you there. Aaron and I will both be there. But again, hopefully then. But if not, we'd love to have you back on at some point. But until then, Tiffany, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
So fun. Nice to see you guys.